What up, guys? Dr. Vic here, and you're listening to another episode on the Mindful Chiropractor podcast. Excited to have you here. Is this week, the topic that I wanted to discuss is something that's been coming up in calls, in some of my group settings, and so forth. And I thought this would be something good to dive in a little bit, discuss a little more, as I've had people ask me these questions, and I was like, why not just do an episode on it? This is what's great. I can share this content and then help as many people as possible with this. And that is this: when you're looking at your business, right? So many times we want to expand in some way, shape, or form, right? We want to continue to grow. And usually there's limits that we feel we hit, right? You feel like there's a barrier. You just can't break through sometimes. You don't know why. Maybe you hire a coach, you read a new book, you buy a new program, you go to someone's workshop, and you're still, maybe you get some growth, but you hit a wall and you're just like, why is this wall always happening to me? Well, and a lot of the work that I do with chiropractors and in business and entrepreneurs is that we don't focus so much on the doing, focus on the being. If you've been listening to this podcast just recently, I did some episodes on this. If you're coming from my Mindful Experiment podcast, you definitely know all about this. But it's one of those things in life where, we focus so much on the doing side of stuff that you don't realize that you're already putting a limit on yourself when you do that. Most limits in our life are controlled and happening through our mind. And the key thing is, some people, if we can just solve how to break through limits, then all of a sudden we will have everything that we desire in our life. But you have to understand this premise first. The limits start and end with you. You're the one that's actually creating them. You see, in life, there really is no limits. Yes, there's limitations of matter. There's definitely a limit there. But when it comes to achieving and creating and experiencing and doing and so forth in your life, there really is no limit to that. The only limit is what you've been putting here. And actually, what's been put in here actually happened to you from 0 to 7. So if we don't look at 0 to 7, then we don't really know the impressions that have been put upon your mind to learn how to break off those things, right? I call this living in the matrix in a sense, a partial part of this, but it's really just the cultural programming, the programming of the mind that has conditioned us in certain ways that we've taken on as a kid, because from 0 to 7, our brain is mostly in a theta brainwave state. And so it's very impressible. It's like a sponge. It just soaks everything up. And it doesn't really critically look through things like as you do, 25 and older, where the prefrontal cortex is fully developed, where you can start analyzing things a lot more and deeper. So it's one of those things that when we look at these limits, if we don't take time to understand them and understand where they're coming from, then no matter what you do, you're going to keep hitting the wall. You may get a break here and there. You will. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. There are many people I know who are very successful who they just kept going, all out, 100%, grinding and grinding and grinding. You see them get to more and more tired, more and more exhausted, more and more health problems, more and more being burned out in ruts. But they're like, I got to grind. I got to get there. I keep going. And then they get there. You're going to do that. That's a work mentality. I'm not saying it can't happen. That is the path to most resistance. I look at what is, and the things I teach is what's the least amount of work, right? What's the path of least effort? That's what I like, or path of least resistance. I know some people say that's the easy route. And I'm like, well, if you're in a state of flow, there's really not a lot of resistance. You're just flowing through it. But it's also called, the one I like to share is the path to least effort. What is the minimum amount of work that I need to do to get the greatest gain possible? That's it. And when you start to look at these kind of concepts, then you don't have to grind so much. You see, it's a whole shift in what we've been taught. It's a whole shift in what we do. And once we start to understand that we're spiritual alchemists, that we create, we can manipulate energy, and we can shift things into our favor just by understanding principles of the mind and how these things work. It's a game changer. And a lot of times people listen to these concepts like, what are they talking about? That's way out there stuff, or that's woo-woo stuff. Okay, fine. Just the first time, when we don't understand something, the first thing we do is reject it. Chiropractors, that's us, right? How many times the patients don't get what we do? Even me, as much as I educate like crazy, sometimes the patients will be like, I just don't understand what the heck you're doing. Or I don't understand what these scans mean. Or I don't understand how you can change my spine through this little adjustment that's improving my x-rays or my scoliosis. I just don't get it. And, you may have heard that before. And it's one of those things where you just got to educate. It doesn't happen all the time. But it's one of the principles that, you look at, how do you break through these barriers for them to understand this? Because once we understand and do a different work, there's a shift coming. I keep talking about this. I've been talking about it for the last 5-6 years, that we're going to start doing things different than how we did them before. And a lot of the stuff I teach, a lot of stuff I work with clients, this is the stuff I work with, is I go to a different aspect, right? So double your profits 6 months, a year, 4 months. Yeah, we'll do that. We can do that. Put the plan together, be aggressive. We can make it happen. Or you want to work less, or you want to have more profits and work less, or you want to lead a more soulful life where you have freedom to do what you choose to do and what you want to have. Can make that happen. But it's not me making it happen. We're going to work on that. But I do it in a very different way, right? So if I say I'm going to double your profits, you're going to think, what ads am I going to do? What things I have to focus on? What kind of little stuff that I have to work on? And really, at the end of the day, it has nothing to do with that. I'm going to work on you because that's where it's at. And once we break the barriers and start doing the work that's needed, then all of a sudden it's a game changer. Then you broke through that resistance. You removed it, in other words, right? Chiropractic, how does neurology work? It's a simple thing. Remove the interference and the body will continue its self-healing, self-regulating mechanisms, right? That's what we do as chiropractors. Remove the interference. That word subluxation, that's for some odd reason is going to be removed in many ways. I have students that'll tell me that we can't talk about that. I'm like, I don't understand. But anyhow, so that is the subluxation process, right? So removing that interference to allow the body's self-healing, self-regulating mechanisms to work. Well, what are we doing when we work on our mind? We work on that mind, we get that program removed in some way, shape, or form. It's really just shifting energy. And when that happens, now all of a sudden you're going to see a whole different perspective happen because things are always working for you. Law of attraction, law of vibration, law of manifestation. Those are all the same damn things. Basically, what it is that it's always working, it's always happening, it's always occurring. The same thing in your body. Your body is a self-healing, self-regulating mechanism. It is always constantly doing this, regardless, as best as possible ability to adapt as best as it can to the environment of itself and others, or it's to itself and an outside environment, external, internal. So when you're looking at that perspective, now we look at our life, right? So it's the same thing. We still have these mechanisms always constantly working. So it's just shifting. And once we can break through, understand where that limit came from, remove that, it opens a door to a whole different world than you ever experienced before. It's a massive different experience, but you have to understand that it's going to the source of understanding that interference, removing that interference, like giving a chiropractic adjustment. And from that perspective, it will create a shift in your life that will be a totally different experience than what you had before. But you have to understand, as neurological principles show, there has to be a patterning out of this. You have to build this new pattern up, right? Neurology doesn't just sever something and move on to some other pattern. You have to minimize the energy or the weight of that connection, otherwise known as Hebb's law, to shift from one to shift to the other. And when we're able to do that, now all of a sudden we are manifesting and creating a whole different reality than you've ever experienced before in your life. And the reason why I say you've ever experienced before in your life, because your old thinking, old limiting controls and programmings have been limiting you to that life. You may have gotten a glimpse of it, but then came back. You got a glimpse of it, but then you came back. And the key factor is, how do we break through that process to remove the limit to let yourself thrive? And when you do this, every area of your life will start to do that, because you'll see it in one, and everything happens over time. So it's understanding and knowing where these limits have come from. I gave you some clues today, right? 0 to 7. Pay attention. Those inner critics, pay attention. Another way you can do this is you can look at your goals of what you want to achieve. You want to have a 7-figure practice? Great. Say, I'm going to make over $1 million next year. Then pay attention to the inner critic, what's in your mind, right? Maybe it's too early. Maybe you're too young. I'm not going to give you this stuff and say, oh, you're going to be a millionaire. You can have it in 1 year. I'm not saying that can't happen. There are people who have done that. I've worked with entrepreneurs who have done that. I've worked with a couple chiropractors, but it's very rare. It's one of the even rare in our profession. The key factor is this. It may take time. It may not. Who knows what the cards are dealt for you? I talk a lot about the law of gender, which states there's a gestational period for all things. But what I care about is just pay attention to the inner critic in your mind. Or let's say you're going to have $1 million practice in 3 years, in 2 years, right? 3 years, 7-figure practice, a little bit more doable. That's kind of the ballpark average. Doesn't mean that's going to be you. Again, I'm not projecting here. I'm just sharing some of the data. But the key factor is whatever you want to have. You want to have the best, wild, amazing marriage in the world. You want to have the most amazing fit body if physical fitness is important to you. You want to have the sharpest mind that can handle any task that comes its way, right? Or you want to have multiple business, whatever this out there crazy goal is, pay attention to that inner critic of what the first knee-jerk response is going to be from that. What's the first thought that happens? There's your limitation. And then you can start to work from there. So that's what I got for you today. And if you're looking to break through in 2022, if you're looking to thrive beyond your wildest dreams, message me, email me, drvic@empoweryourrally.com. Or if you see me on Facebook and Instagram, connect with me, DM me. and just say 2022. Let's make this happen to where we can discuss, see where you're at, and talk from there on how that could be a potential reality for you. I look forward to connecting with you guys next week. As always, I appreciate you. Subscribe, like, if you thought this was inspirational or was deep, profound thoughts to help you level up in your own business and your life, share this with someone that you know by paying it forward. Appreciate you guys. I'll talk to y'all next week.